More now on Elizabeth Edwards. Her funeral is scheduled for 1 p.m. this Saturday at the same church where her son Wade's was held. As we told you earlier, she will be laid to rest beside Wade, the son she lost 14 years ago. And she spoke often of Wade and her hopes for all her children in her final days.
Grown-ups always think we understand our own mortality, but we don't. We don't understand our own mortality. We know that because we experienced it when Wade died. All of those things started to clarify for us. You can't put it off. That you don't know when your last day is. You have to do today what it is you want to accomplish. I have cancer, and do I concede that I'm going to die from it, or die from it in months, or die from it in 5 years, or die from it in 10? I will not concede that. It's going to have to actually win that battle before I concede it. And I'm going to fight it the whole way with everything I know how to use. For me, it's not as scary. In part because I have to believe that there's a chance of reunion of some sort with Wade, and so death offers me that, which life can't offer me. So death I don't fear it in the same way, except that I fear it for my family. And I fear what happens to them. The children understand that the cancer has come back, and we didn't try to prettify that in any way. This is the way it is. But we also said at the same time, everybody who's sitting at this table who's not going to die, raise your hand. And they realize that we're all going to die. And these children think back on what happened. They'll see their parents as doing one of two things. Here's adversity, and here's how you react. Either you meet it and say, I'm going to fight for the things I care about, or you say that adversity wins. All of us have the day before we die. We don't know what it is, and all we can hope is that on the day we die, when we look back at the day before, we think that was a day well spent.
And joining me now is Sandra Sobrai Westfall. She's written extensively for People magazine about Elizabeth Edwards and wrote the cover story in the new issue. Thanks for joining us this morning. We just heard Elizabeth Edwards say that all we can do is look back on the day before and think this was a day well spent, the day before we die. And from your reporting, it sounds like these final days were days well spent.
They were. You know, she had her dream house was finally full with family. They looked through old photos, told stories, and I'm told they had as many laughs as tears, and that's just how she would have wanted it. And
one of her friends is quoted as saying it was an easy passing.
That's how it was described to me, that after so much difficult pain the past couple of years, physical and emotional, that this was how she deserved it to be. It was easy, and she was at peace, and that helped her family feel at peace.
You know, Robin was talking to Glenn Bergenfield in the first hour, one of Elizabeth's old friends, talking about how she prepared her children, and he said that she prepared the children the best. Tell us more about that.
You know, she told me back in, I think it was 2007, that she had for years been writing a dying letter to her children. It was on her computer as a file called Dying Letter. And it was everything from how to core a head of lettuce to how to pick a mate, how to pick a church. And I asked her this summer when I saw her, you know, are you done with that letter? Are you still editing and tweaking away? And she said, you know, I'll never be done. A mother is never finished giving advice to her children. So she continued to work on it, but as a mother, she prepared those children as best as anybody possibly could.
And she said, I think she told you that she actually got the idea from watching the movie Terms of Endearment.
She did, yes, and it was long before she ever dreamed she would get cancer. She just felt compelled as a mom to give her children what they needed to go on without her whenever that day came.
We heard that John Edwards was by Elizabeth's side in these final days as well. And one of the things you write about that Elizabeth at the end was beginning to see the John that she remembered from their first days.
And she struggled with her feelings for him. She was so determined not to diminish him in the eyes of her children, and yet her pain ran very deep with him. And so she still struggled with forgiveness, but she let him in because she knew that the children needed that and that they were really going to be relying on him after she passed.
So what happens now with the kids, Jack and Emma Claire, who were at home? They're going to move back into the big house with John?
You know, they've always been in that house. Elizabeth bought a new house that she was going to renovate for them to move into in the springtime and put behind her all the unhappy memories of the recent years in that big house in Chapel Hill. Even as late as the end of October, she was meeting with contractors to have that house redone. And now the children will stay put in that big house that they built together. John will move back in, and the kids will have that stability.
We heard that Kate went back home from Washington, D.C. after Thanksgiving and stayed until her mother's final day. What kind of role is she going to play in raising Jack and Emma Claire?
She told us last summer that of course she is going to be there for them. She was her mother's pride and joy. She's now an anti-discrimination lawyer in Washington, and Elizabeth just glowed with pride that Kate had chosen a track that was going to champion, those who were discriminated against, and that made her mother very proud. And I think she'll continue her mother's legacy for her younger siblings.
And finally, the funeral will be this weekend in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Did Elizabeth play a big role in planning it?
I don't know that, but she had so lulled those around her into thinking that this was going to be a very distant day, that if she was making those plans, it was very quietly and privately. I know she had legal papers, a will that she had recently updated, so her instructions would have been clear. But nobody saw this coming as soon as it was, so I don't think, even as late as Thanksgiving, nobody was talking funeral plans.
Okay, Sandra, thanks very much.